Good Wednesday, everybody. I'm Robin Robinson. This is your other news. Those of you who know me know that for like 37 years, 5 nights a week, I had to figure out what I was going to wear to be on television. The first 20 or so, we only dressed from the like down to the waist because we were never going to show the rest of our body. And then we started walking around the studio and what have you, had to think about it more. But it wasn't a big decision because you didn't want to be distracting, right? I'm not a fashionista. I'm not very fashionable. I can't figure out what goes with what. And the lovely thing about this podcast is I just kind of throw on whatever, except today. Today, I'm like, what do I wear to talk to an absolute fashion genius, an icon, a woman who has created things that you wouldn't even think of until you see them and see how fabulous they are. She is a dear friend of mine. She has been through thick and thin, but her designs, her vision, her eye are unparalleled. Not to mention the fact that she's such a multi-layered person, the things that she cares about and works toward for the benefit of all of us, besides just dressing us, making us look good. Because, like I said, I can't make a decision. It's you need to meet her, and you're about to. Please welcome my dear friend, fashion designer Barbara Bates.
Thank you. I
Barbara,
love that intro. Can we do that again? I think take two. Let's do that one more time. Thank
you're
you.
stopping. I circles like a person who doesn't know what to do or what to pick, and there you are helping me out. I really appreciate it. Um, are you you're working full time still, right?
I
You're
am.
creating things.
I am
Okay,
still working full time. I don't know anything about that word retired. I don't, it's not in my vocabulary.
that's right. We're both failing at retirement. But one thing I want people to know is that when we say you've been doing this for 40 years,
All right.
um, nothing old about what you do. So I want to show a real quick glimpse of your 2023 runway collection, so people can see just how young and fabulous and fun it is. Can I get a picture of that? You see, look at that. That's graffiti, right? On and the outfit underneath. Very very current. Um, and of course, we'll talk about how coats were your kind of your entree. You were so famous for those leather coats with the big shoulders. But how do you stay current like that? You didn't do that graffiti, right?
No, I actually collaborated with a young artist. Actually, a friend of my son's that he grew up with. I watched him as a little kid grow up, and he does art really well. So I just had him paint on the leather, and that was like a collaboration that we did. And I love the graffiti. I just love like the mix mac of all the colors and the whimsical things, and so I kind of like ran with it. So I'm still doing collections. I'm still doing pieces that have graffiti artwork on them.
I know I got one of the purses, and I know they were limited, so I ran down there to get mine right away. I'm having a little issue with your audio. Sorry about that. And now you just my phone just rang. Can you talk again for me, Barbara, so I can see if there is a technical problem that we need to address here?
Sure. A 1, 2, 3 sort of situation. 1, 2, 3.
Hmm. Okay, we're gonna. I'm yeah, that is not gonna work for me. I'm gonna ask my producer Cindy. What does she think? What do you think, Cindy? She never speaks. Keep going. All right, we're gonna keep going. Maybe it doesn't sound that way to the outside world. I hope not. Anyway, so I love the new fresh look, the collaboration. Um, but you are not, and I know this because I know you. You are not one of those like people that went to the Fashion Institute of wherever, whatever, and learn to sew and make patterns, etc. You are a self-taught and uh, long time, like starting in high school, and don't even know how to sew kind of designer. Am I right?
Absolutely. So I've been doing collaborations since the beginning of time. I think my strength is knowing what was fashionable at the time, having an innate sense of what fabrics could become, seeing them on the boat, seeing them in the fabric store, touching them, getting a hand of what the fabric was, and oh, this would look great this way, this would look great that way. And fashion sense of what's fashionable at that particular time during those particular years, that makes a lot of sense also. So I was always interested in fashion, always interested in buying it, and then of course I love to create it. And one of the reasons I started creating is that I loved fashion that had a really high price tag on it, and that was just not in my budget. And so I wanted to know, why do these things cost so much? Like, Why does a pair of leather pants cost, at that time, we're talking 40 years ago, so I may have been $700, and a pair of leather pants like that today are probably like $3,000. So I wanted to know, why does that cost so much, and how could I go about cutting out the middleman and doing it myself? So that was my first, entree into being an entrepreneur. So I looked, where do you buy leather? Where do you buy really soft, good leather? And where can I find someone who knows how to sew? And then when I started doing that for myself, people started seeing my things and asking for them. And then I parlayed it into a business.
And you grew up in Chicago. How did that impact your vision?
So, you mean, growing up in Chicago is really urban. So you have people that are interested in fashion, and you have people that are interested in, well, at that time, we called it street fashion, but it was just still just fashion. So just being in a metropolitan city that offered things like wonderful fabric stores, wonderful sources for buying, um, good tailors that had just been coming in from Europe who had impeccable tailoring skills. There was like a huge influx of migrants from Poland that had come into the United States in the 80s, and they had tailoring skills that were just unbelievable. And I reached out to those communities, and I brought them on board to work with me and to teach, young people in the African American community that wanted to be designers how to pick up those skills, hone in on those skills so they could do, if they want to do their own business, they could.
You've always been a mentor. We should point out that Chicago does have the largest population of Polish people outside of Warsaw. We are this is
Ah,
like their adopted homeland. And through that, what was the most difficult part? What was I'm sure there were some a lot of hoops to jump through, but making fashionable things for other people, making a living at it. What was the hardest?
hmm. Well, there were like early on, it happened so quick and fast for me until I really can't say that I had a period that I was wondering, like, how do I move forward? I think because I was wearing things first, I had already gained a reputation of being a fashion designer, and I wasn't. I was just like wearing my own designs, and people were saying, "Oh, we like what you wear," and then it kind of like moved into doing things for other people once they said, "Oh, I really like what you're wearing," and then I got the nerve to say, "Oh, I could make one for you," and then I had to, quickly figure out, like, how do I make that happen? And I think I was doing that before I actually had a shop and had the tailors. I guess one of the hardest things, if I think about it just as time moved on, was to continue to find good tailors. Because as I grew older, my tailors grew older, people wanted to return back to their home, people wanted to start their own businesses, people wanted to retire. So looking for skilled people is probably one of the hardest things. Clients had never really been difficult to look for because I had a little niche I had cut out for myself, doing things that were exotic things. They were being done by an African American designer, which sort of made it like really special for me. And I was selling myself first, and then people were coming to see my product.
You're exactly right, because it was exotic, and you're African American designer, which means that high profile African Americans who were going to be on red carpets or out in the public eye, and didn't want to have something just off the rack or go spend $10,000 or something from Gucci, which wasn't of their community. They ran to you. It was like you were a magnet. I have a photo of like some of the biggest names in entertainment from I don't know how many years ago, between 30 and 40, uh,
No,
all wearing Bates. So this just happened to be kind of the comedians that had gathered around you. And they want to look outstanding, right, on stage. They want to stand out. Particularly, I know you and I were very good friends with Bernie Mac, and he would put on some fits. He was not going to be lost in the crowd. Okay, he was going to be red or checked, and there's Bernie there. I want to and there's you and Mike Tyson. I'm sure Tyson wasn't a very easy individual to fit, because
actually, with Mike, he was the most gracious, one of the most gracious people that I've ever worked with. And the way we got together, he was in prison. He was serving a prison sentence for a rape situation that had happened, and someone from Chicago went there to visit him, and they happened to have a cell phone. and they let him use the cell phone. And he called me and he said, "I'll be coming home in a couple of days, and I want to get some things from you and for my crew. And would you meet me?" And it was someplace in Ohio. And he says, "If you could fly out on this date, meet me there. I'll have someone pick you up." And that's how my introduction with clothing was made to Mike. My original introduction was made to him, through meeting him at Caesar's Palace, him walking in the ring. And I said, my son would love it if I could get a picture with Mike Tyson. And I had just sent a lot of clothes to Caesar's Palace, to a boutique, one of the first boutiques I'd ever sold to. So I
Uh-huh.
was really in Vegas just to see, would people buy my things if they didn't know who I was. And I said, I went down to the security guard and I said, could I take a picture with him? And he went over to him and he said, "There's someone here. They want to take a picture." And they let me actually come through. So I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to stand in front of Mike Tyson and take a picture." So, I asked, "Could I take the picture?" He said, "Yeah, you can sit here." And then while I was sitting there and they were getting the camera ready, I said, "My name is Barbara Bates. I'm from Chicago. I'm a fashion designer, blah, 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 blah." And he said, "Barbara Bates?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Barbara Bates?" He said, "Do you sell clothes in Vegas?" I said, "Well, actually, I don't, but I do. I have something over." And he says, "No, no, no. You can have something in Caesar's Palace. I was just there. I bought everything in there for Robin." And at the time, he was dating Robin. And when I
Right.
went back to the store, they had bought all the stuff, and he started hitting his friends saying, "Do you believe it? This is Barbara Bates sitting next to me." And so that was my first time of being a celebrity with a celebrity. He was excited that he was meeting me. I was excited that I was meeting him, and I was going to take a check home from the store from all the stuff he had bought.
That's wow. What a story. Talk about no degrees of separation. And then later on, you get to outfit him and his
And
whole.
then later on to call me, yeah.
Well, there's another Mike that was fairly famous that was very happy to wear your clothes because I remember when he first came to Chicago and his wrists were showing and everything he wore because all the sleeves were too short. Michael Jordan absolutely loved your clothes. This leather jacket with the studs on it, that was one of your signature looks. We were afraid he was going to wear holes in there. Everything he went to. But just imagine, for him to have something that was someone that could design for his size and with style. Look at that! Look at that sport coat there. What is that?
Yeah, it was a sports jacket that I did for him, and he had actually just come in to fit for it. And before he walked out the door, somebody said, "Hey, let's get a picture of that." And I don't believe it was a picture on a cell phone. I'm sure it was like on a paper Polaroid camera and the film had to be like produced or whatever. But Michael was one of my first like high profile athletes. And that just opened up the whole door for athletes because everybody wanted to be like Mike. I was dressing, he was dressing pretty spiffy, and when the teams would come in town to play and everybody comes to Chicago, Michael would just send them my way. So I had a wonderful relationship with African American ball players, like in the late '80s and the '90s, because they wanted to have leather, they wanted to have colorful shirts, they wanted to have things they couldn't go into the store and buy. And even though I love doing women's clothes, I was just thrust into menswear. So like 90% of my business turned into doing things for ball players, for football players, basketball players that likes.
Well, because the word spreads, and so they get the threesome. They can have clothes that fit them because they're not all easy to fit, that look fabulous, and by an African American designer. They walk proud in your clothes. I have to say, I had one of those leather jackets with the big shoulders, and it was people will say, "Is that a Bates? Is that a Bates?" So all through that time, right? It's a lot of resilience because you're not there's not like a Barbara Bates boutique on Rodeo Drive, or I think there should be, but maybe that would take away from the personal touch of your creativity. I don't know, but you stayed standing. During the pandemic, when people were half naked half the time because they were home alone, right? They weren't wearing or buying any clothes. You started manufacturing masks.
And it was difficult, believe it or not. I mean, when I watched on television early in March how the people at the hospital were wearing used masks because they didn't have masks, and I got a call from a friend of ours, Tyrone Studemeyer, who said, "Barbara, you should make masks." And I wasn't working; we were sitting at home, and I just thought, not interested. And then I got another call a few days later, and I'm watching the news, and of course, it was so devastating early on. It was like really just unbelievable what was going on. And so I said I was going to, I was going to try it. I didn't know how to make a mask. I could make a $2,000 coat, but I didn't know how to make a $5 mask. I didn't understand. I just didn't understand it. So I got a few people together and got permission to come into the South Loop to come in to get people to come to my shop to work. And it took us about a week. After a week, we had probably finished about five until we got it right. And then we found a filter. A friend of mine found a filter that had a high rating on it. And we put that do it yourself mask with that high filter. And we came up with a mask that we thought was, comparable to an N95. And the first mask that I made, I ran them through the foundation and I gave them away to frontline workers. We took some over to Sinai Hospital and we gave them away to police officers from the suburbs and from the city. And then the word just started spreading about us doing that. And then people wanted to buy masks. And so then, because I swore I wasn't going to make those decorative masks with sequins and rhinestones and all that crazy fabrics, I just wasn't going to do that. But my phone kept ringing and people wanted it. So the next thing you knew, I was doing decorative masks, and so word really spread about that. And then after that, Mike Alderman knew that there was going to be a contract coming down the pipelines, and she spoke to the mayor about me, and I was able to receive a city contract to do masks. So the COVID was bittersweet for me. I was able to stay alive, to keep afloat, and stay in business. During a time when nobody was buying clothing, they just weren't, and so that whole situation, as I say, was definitely bittersweet. Never want to see that come back again in my lifetime.
No, but if I do still have one of your decorated masks. It's not the kind of thing you throw away, right? So you keep it clean and keep wearing it. Um, you mentioned your foundation. I do want to talk about the Barbara Bates Foundation, and I also want to talk about we're calling this episode "Iconic Resilience" and how resilient you've been, resilient, but also not just standing strong, but being creative about getting from this point to another point, and it's being recognized. I kind of love this. It's like a renaissance or a rediscovering. Young people act like they've discovered you, so you must be new, right? But it's just new to them. But
Absolutely.
you're being honored for your longevity. So you had the Chicago History Museum, was it that did a whole salute to you? Um,
Unbelievable. That was like unbelievable to me to be named with those people. Those were the designers' names that I knew growing up. And so to even have been called for that, that was a moment that I really don't have words to describe. When they put the museum collection up. As a matter of fact, when I went there to view it the night that was going to be shown, I mean, I boohooed and cried like a baby in front of it. Just it was overwhelming to me.
you are so deserving.
Yeah.
All of that,
Yes.
all of that, and so that's kind of a tribute to your longevity and your legacy. But you are not gone. You are fresh as the morning dew. What is Joe Fresh Goods said you did a
Oh wow.
you see are those that's the collaboration you did with Joe Fresh Goods.
Absolutely. Yeah. That one was. Yeah. Yeah, my youngest son is all in that world of young creatives and the new stuff that's going on, and I kind of poo-pooed it for a while because I knew that I was like aging out, so to speak, and that just wasn't my thing. And then Joe was doing. I knew of what he was doing, and I had heard about all these collaborations that young people were doing with different designers. And when he reached out to me about a project that he was going to do, and it had something to do with prom dresses, and then the brand that he worked with, New Balance. Then he thought it fitting that I would be the person to make the prom dress, and then he would add a bit of my story in with what he was doing. So that was a really cool collaboration. It was really nice. Yeah.
Well, it's not. It's fitting for you to make the prom dress. We can't even talk about everything that you do because for many years, every year you would make prom dresses for young women who could not afford a prom dress, and then your friends would donate money so they could have shoes and all the whole and makeup artists and just make their prom experience something that it would not have otherwise been. And that's just your heart.
The prom dresses started out of course, me going to an alternative school to speak when I started getting accolades in the city of Chicago, and there was a newspaper article that was printed. I think I was doing something with Scottie Pippen or something like that, and I got a phone call from a young lady that asked me, was I the same Barbara Bates that grew up on the West Side, and did I have a baby in high school? And I was just like, whoa, like taken aback with it. And because that's when you have a child in high school, you want that had the baby, it's over, so everybody can stop crying and falling apart. Let's just move on with life, and that's kind of what I had done. But she said, I'm actually calling to say that I've been following you. I went to school with you. You may not remember me, but I definitely remember you. You always talked about fashion. And here it is, you're doing something. I work with young girls that are pregnant teens. Would you come over to Bethany Hospital on the west side, and would you speak to them? And, I said yes when I got off the phone. I had no intentions of going because I didn't really understand, like, how could that traumatic period for me be something that I would want to go and talk about? And I had never really talked about it. My oldest son was probably like 14 at the time. And it seemed like we were growing the same age. He was 14, I was 15. When he turned 16, I turned 17. It's like we were aging at at the same period, since there was such a small amount of time. And I actually just did not know what I was going to say. And on the day that I was supposed to be there, she called, and I had nothing to say because I didn't write anything down because I hadn't planned on going. And just driving there, I was just like, what am I going to say when I get there? Like, what? And when I went into the room and I saw like about, 20 young girls, age 11 to 15, I just started to just tell my story because it was in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. So I knew it very well. And I just started telling the story that I never wanted to tell or talk about, actually had forgotten, but they brought it to the forefront. And then telling the story, there were pockets in that story that they stood up and they clapped about. And they were things that didn't resonate with me because when you're in that situation, you don't stop to think there's a nice part to it. I graduated from high school 1 year early, and I graduated from high school with honors. And I had started this business, and it was probably like 2 years old at the time. I'm working with athletes, and they were just, clapping. And I thought I was going there to help them on that day. But as I stood in front of them, they were like, they
They
had just like,
they healed you.
yeah, they actually like killed me that day. And that was like the change of everything. That's the reason that I'm sitting here talking with you today. That particular incident turned into me saying, if I want to do something for you guys because you don't know what you've done for me. And if you go back to your high school and graduate, I'll make your prom dress. And that was like a promise that I made to them. But then the next day, I get a call from CPS to say, we understand you went to Chicago Public Schools. You have this amazing story to tell. And we have 6 schools that are on the south side that are for alternative girls. We want to know, would you go there and would you speak to them? And so I became a speaker, and my employees would hate it because every time I would come back and say, we got more free prom dresses to make. So nobody was getting a raise. And then I couldn't do it by myself. So I started asking friends to help, and friends didn't help. And then somebody said you should start a foundation. I didn't even know what a foundation was, but I did. And years later, we've given away, I don't know, a couple, no, not a couple, maybe 1,000 prom dresses, a few hundred suits to inner city kids, not just girls that were teen moms, but just people that you don't see the young people for whatever reason. So I wanted them to be seen on, just if it was just that one day, to be seen on prom, be proud, gain a little self esteem, and that was just my give back for what they gave to me.
And Lord knows what they've probably given paid forward thanks to what you gave to them. So I remember because you did enlist all your friends in this. As we should have been for sure. You've mentioned your son a couple times. You have two sons, one
Two,
son.
I have 2 sons. Yeah, I
So
have 2 sons. My
I,
oldest son is a world-renowned DJ. He's a house DJ. His name is Gene Hunt. He's with the Hot Mix Five, and he travels extensively. DJing. He's been a DJ almost as long as I've been a designer because he started so young. And absolutely, what is old is now new, as you say. And so he's like so busy traveling, like constantly.
especially
And yeah,
it's international. So congratulations, and of course we know Gene Hunt. Okay,
yes.
youngest son kind of led you into yet another change the world moment.
Yes, 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 yes. So my youngest son, Christopher, was away in Champaign, supposedly going to school, but making bad decisions, and he ended up being receiving a prison sentence for a nonviolent, low-level drug offense. And it took about a year or and a half or so going back and forth to court. I could never go to any of the court hearings, so his dad would always go. They were held down in Champaign, which is where the case actually started. And in 2009 of April, he received a 19-year federal prison sentence um, for the nonviolent drug offense. And I thought it was just horrific the amount of time. I never said that he was innocent of anything. I just didn't think the time that was given had anything to do with the actual sentence. I thought that there should have been more discretion with the judge. And even after they let him come home to like get himself together for the 30 days before reporting to prison, I told him, we're going to fight this. This is like, I'm going to do whatever I can, or we just, we can look into this. I know things can be done. And I didn't know anything. This was all very new to me. So I was just speaking on, just a mother about to lose her son off to the prison system. And I really just didn't know what to do except I'm going to try to fight it. And so, I, I, I did. I reached out to different organizations, Families Against Mandatory Minimum Sentencing in Washington, D.C., and I did a fundraiser in my shop to just try to let people in the neighborhood know that, there's a lot of our young folks that are going to prison for drugs, but we need to be aware that there's something called a mandatory minimum sentence, and some of them are being sentenced horrifically, young men and young women, and that is not fair. And I gave another one at my church that I went to, which was a much larger one, and I had a lot of people that came in who had served sentences and had received commutations. One of them from Bill Clinton, she received a commutation from the president at the time, and I was just trying to let people know about what was going on in our prison system. And then I got hit with another Mickey, and I had to like stop that fight for a little bit.
And I want to talk about that. But while you were in your advocacy for justice, really for a change in the system, in the policies that were systemically locking up our young people disproportionately, and everybody's apologized for it now, right? That mass incarceration, that A, didn't make us any safer, and B, probably made us less safe because of what it did to communities, depriving them of those, sons and fathers and mothers, and just a horrific, misguided policy period, when everybody was hollering about, lock them up, lock them up.
Right.
And because it was your son, right, we all felt really personally invested, and that's kind of what it takes to get people to pay attention to these things. You um you met a woman who had her sentence commuted by Bill Clinton, and the way I found this out was I was calling you to ask you if you would be a part of a host committee for a screening of a movie about her experience, which is called Kimba. And some people may remember the Free Kimba movement from the 90s. And you said, "Oh, I met her while I was advocating on my son's behalf." So once again, everything is just so connected. Um, but prior to that, right? We're not even aware, that this is going on unless it happens to someone in your family.
Absolutely. So many people, they just hear about, Pookie and Ray Ray going off to jail, and a lot of times you don't get like all the information. But once I start advocating for Chris, I start getting letters. Like I'm talking like hundreds of letters from young men and women who really thought that I could make a difference, or they heard because I had some notoriety from fashion, and they heard my name and Barbara Bates is doing blah 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 for her son. That writing the letter could help. For me, all it did was just like tear my heart apart because there's really nothing you can do when you're in a federal prison system. You could advocate, you could go, you could go wherever it is you think that you can go, and at the end of the day, they hear you, but they don't hear you. You're going to serve out the sentence unless the laws change, or unless there's definitely something in your case that you could go back and bring up again. And most times they ask young men and women to plead guilty, and if you plead guilty, then that means you cannot go back into court on that case. You're pleading guilty pretty much because you want to secure yourself in getting what they're offering you instead of what you could get.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they will just say, I'm guilty to get what's sitting in front of them on the table instead of the surprise that could come to them.
It's a devil's bargain. It really is. So you advocated for Chris. Oh, Sherry Runner, who we both know, she's a community advocate. Just sent a nice message, and I'm going to see if I can read. I don't know if you can read. It says, Barbara Bates has been a part of some very important days in my life. I love her, but I never knew all of this. Some, but not all. Now I love her more. There is so much. We
Oh,
can
wow.
hour. I'm not going to keep you for the next hour, but I want to point out that while you were trying to help your son, you were not just focused on your son. As again, you were looking at the structural and systemic inequities that needed to be changed policy wise. But you also, now that's kind of, academic, right? But personally, when people get out of prison, they have to show that they have a job. within a certain amount of time. And I'll never forget walking into your shop and this big old black guy sitting there, and I'm like, is this a new seamstress? Can he sew? Here, right? You've given him a job, right? Whatever you needed at the shop, even though he couldn't sew, maybe I don't know if he had fashion, and because that helped him with his reentry. And you did that for several people. That's very personal. That's really, really letting someone into your world so that they can re-enter into society with success. And that man was Reynolds Wintersmith.
Right,
And
right. And actually, Reynolds received a commutation or pardon from Barack. He was one of the first. But in 1986, when I opened up my company, one of the young men that did the cleaning for me was at the halfway house. When you come home from federal prison, then you have to go to a halfway house for about 6 months. Salvation Army has a halfway house. And in 1986, September, when I opened up my doors, I had someone from the Salvation Army work with me. And after he left 2 years later, another friend of mine who had went away to federal sent someone to me, and when they got to halfway house, they called me. So the halfway house had a relationship with me, and I had one with them. So then they started calling me in February for Black History Month to come and speak about, what I was doing, just in terms. This is before my son went away. This is
mhm.
like early in my career, but just to come and speak about my career and working with athletes and all that. And never in a million years had I died and come back 10 times would I know that I would be going there speaking to them, and then one day my son would end up there. And I'm not going to say he received special treatment when he went there, because the director there said, "Now, when your son comes here, he doesn't get special treatment." I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure." But I knew that it would be he would be okay. It would be fine for him when he went there, and it was. And I probably hired about 12 people, through my 40-year career from halfway house that came home and they needed a job in order to stay out to get their own apartment, because after like 6 months they let you leave halfway house. And so I was instrumental in that. And of course, yeah, it just a full circle moment to go there. When my son came home, I was going there visiting him.
Oh my God, yeah. Because who would have known? I mean, just because we had hung out with criminals, who would have known we'd come back to be a part of our success and be a part of giving back. So while you're on this kind of mission, right? And your son is home. We should point that out.
Yeah, my son's been home almost 4 years, 3.5 years now.
Congratulations. And he's
Thank you.
doing really well. He sent me a bunch of press stuff about you. I mean, it was right on point. So I see great things in his future, Chris. But while you're, embarking on this mission, right, you get bad news about your own health.
So my son left on Thursday, April the 29th. I mean, you just kind of like remember those dates. And I was just, feeling like a mom and laying in the bed. And actually, I was like crying, and I had my arms wrapped around myself. And I felt like a little like marble, like under my left breast, like a movement that I had never felt before. And it concerned me, but I knew that my thing was white women got breast cancer, women with big breasts, or people who had breast cancer in their family. And I had all the wrong information. I waited about 3 weeks before I decided to go to the doctor to have it checked on. And on June 1st, I went to the hospital and I was diagnosed that day while I was there getting a physical, that it was breast cancer. They ended up doing the ultrasound and then they did a biopsy all that same day. And I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And at that point, the whole world just like stops and numbs. But I was still trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do, about Chris? Because I had been to Washington once to advocate for him, and I was just like really like fighting him. But I thought that I had a fight in front of me, and I was going to have to put him on the back burner. So I did. I went through my treatment, and at that point, I mean, I couldn't even pray for myself. Too much had happened. I was like the story of Job, where you lose everything. And I always thought that story of Job kind of sucked. Like, who wants to lose their kids, and who wants to have their health lost, and then their finances and everything that Job lost? I'm telling you, I was truly like the Job moment. And but I also realized later on, after I delved into the story a little bit more, because I would always hear my mama talk about, oh, Job, this Job. I thought I needed to like do some reading up. And I just found that everything was restored to Job, and it was like his unwavering faith. And I just had faith through all of it. I never stopped and said, "Why me?" I just refused to say, "Why me?" because it would be like giving in. I just didn't even want my mind to go there. Like, why is all this happening to me at one time? So I just refused to say that. I told everybody that I came in contact with, a mailman, a truck driver, a homeless person, that I had breast cancer, because people have a tendency to pray for you, and I couldn't pray for myself because I didn't know what to say without being pitiful. So I just told everybody, and people prayed for me, and that was like what pulled me through. It was like all those prayers from people really like pulled me through all of it. It helped when I went to go see Chris. I never stopped going to see him. He would get a visit every month from his dad and our friends, so we stayed in constant contact. And I went through my treatment going there. My treatment was, chemo and radiation, and I only got sick maybe twice that I couldn't come to work. I would go to my chemo, come to the shop, lay in the back on fabric till I get myself together, and I would just like keep it moving.
Wow. So again, you're ahead of your time because back in that time, it was still a time when people didn't say the C word. They didn't, it was almost like you've done something wrong because you had cancer, not realizing that by sharing it, you empower other people to say, oh, maybe I should go get a mammogram, or to understand that it's out there,
Absolutely,
and
absolutely,
able to pray for you. So you were, I remember you wasn't, it was no secret because you have nothing to hide. I mean, it's not like something you did wrong, even though, a lot of women don't, get regular mammograms, especially in black neighborhoods. Maybe they don't
right?
have access to mammography. And sometimes the mammography that they have access to is not as high level as it,
Absolutely.
which brings us to the Mount Sinai Barbara Bates Breast Imaging Center. So, yeah, there you go again. Make a huge difference because Mount Sinai is, of course, in the black neighborhood, and it didn't have the top notch mammography equipment, right?
Absolutely. So I actually live like right across the park from Sinai, and look out my window and I can see Sinai. And it's the hospital that's in the neighborhood that you say, if anything happens to me, pass it up, take me downtown, because we all assume that the big hospitals downtown are the ones that we want to be at. And that was kind of like, my thinking. And then I got introduced to the staff at Sinai, and once I got inside and saw the inner workings of what they did, these were things that people on the outside, lay people, would not know about the hospital, about the amazing trauma center that they have. And I just kind of like, I fell in love with the hospital, that particular day. And I was in the process of having a fashion show that would raise money, because I thought that I was intelligent, but I wasn't getting mammograms. So I wanted to like let the people in my community know, with the voice that I had in my community, that how important it was. And I was a little salty about people who had had breast cancer that were in my space but never said to me I had breast cancer. I was like, hey, well, why wouldn't you have said something? I guess they were like, hey, that was my business. But I just figured that if you'd have said something, maybe I would have done something different, because I just did not know. I didn't have the right facts. So I gave a fashion show, and the fashion show was at Northwestern, where I received my treatment. Thanks to my pastor, Dr. Horace Smith, who's on staff there. He was able to introduce me to the staff there, and I got my treatment there. I had a fashion show with 50 models. All the models were breast cancer survivors, and we raised money. And the money was given to Sinai Hospital, because I wanted to give it to a hospital that I thought really needed it. So Northwestern agreed that the check for $50,000 would go to Sinai. Once I gave Sinai that check, then the president thought, hey, I got a good one on the hook. He called me up and said, if you could raise 500,000 in 5 years, we'll name something after you over here. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that. It's like a bill. I'm not a fundraiser. I'm not a woman of means. I did not do this by myself. It was difficult to raise $50,000 as far as I was concerned. And so I was like, no, thanks. But after like about a month of courting me and calling me, and then an anonymous donor putting up $250,000 if I would say yes to raise the rest, then I did say yes. And it took us about 4 years, and I did breast cancer walks. One of the walks, you actually came up with the name of it. It's called Walk Where You Live. You're like, we always do walking downtown in the muckety muck spaces. Let's walk right in our neighborhood. So thank you for that. Walk Where You Live was done in Douglas Park. We did three of those walks. They probably raised a couple 100,000. I did another fashion show that raised money. We sold candy. We stood outside at the bus stop and went up to cars and collected money. A lot of the money was raised grassroots. Most of it was. And
And here we
two
are.
years ago, Sinai renamed and did a brand new center and bought their first brand new 3D breast imaging machine thanks to the Barbara Bates Foundation.
Oh my God, that's an amazing yes, right. I hear service in the background. So
But had I not been a breast cancer survivor, I wouldn't have been thinking about this. So a lot that happens to me happens because it lands on my door and slaps me in the face and kicks me around, and then I do something. I'm not that savvy to sit back and say, "Okay, I think I'm going to make prom dresses," or "Okay, I think I'm going to do." I didn't have that in me. Stuff had to come and like just beat me up, and then I figured out to do something with it.
you see it, you problem solve with creativity. And so, which brings me to back to your the Bates Imaging Center at Mount Sinai. There is a they need to upgrade or update the software. They have some other expenses that have come up, and you have agreed to do one more fashion show fundraiser for that cause. So I want to
Absolutely. So what has actually happened is that Northwestern has given them an additional 3D breast imaging machine, and to update the software for that is going to cost quite a bit of money. And so we are going to have a fashion show actually October the 19th, and it's going to be at Sinai. We're transforming three conference rooms into the most amazing runway that you can imagine. And half the models are survivors, and then we have professional models, we have real women, and we're going to raise money so that they can get the second 3D breast imaging machine put in place. And we also have all new furniture that is breast cancer furniture being donated to us by Black Lion through Hooker Furniture and Susan G. Coleman. And that's going to be donated to us. And so when you come to the fashion show, you'll take a small little trip over to the imaging center just to see what your dollars have done for us. So we just want people to come out to the fashion show and support Sinai's Imaging Center and the models that are going to model in the fashion show.
And can I say, the fashion shows notoriously attract people that you'd be like, "Oh my God, is that so and so?" There, I mean, there's a lot of celebrities, but everybody's a star. You are you're so grassroots, love from the grassroots to the treetops. Um, and I love a little plug, Black Lion, that store over there
Oh
on
my
Mich-
gosh, amazing people. They're just so kind. They're so gracious. It's unbelievable. They were going to have an auction for all of this furniture, and then they said, forget an auction. We're going to donate this to you. And we're going to go over there to the hospital and we're going to decorate it. And as you know, they have unbelievable decorating skills.
their stuff is just it's like you want all of it. It's kind of like your clothes. It's unique. It's not the ordinary. It's exotic, but practical. Well, great quality. So that's my Black Lion pitch for the day. Say my real pitch for you, Barbara Bates. I don't think that I have even wrapped my head around all the things that you do, are doing, and have done. So I think that you are certainly an icon and super resilient. Sometimes I wonder, why do we have to be so resilient? Can I have it a little easier, please? But you really are. You're one of my heroes, and I really appreciate you being with me today. In other news, I'll see you on October 19th at this big fundraiser for the Mount Sinai Robert Bates Breast Imaging Center. And just keep doing what you do. And I'm gonna come down and see if there's not a dress or something I can afford out here.
Oh, we got you. We got you. We got you.
Uh,
No more afflictions, Lord. Robin looks like she may want one. Send something her way. Leave me alone for a little bit.
I'm, I'm addicted to talking to people like you, to sharing these kind of conversations because it's not what people get on the news. And so after all those years, I have a chance to give them some other news. And you are certainly a fabulous part of that. Thank you, Barbara Bates, Bates Designs.
It's my pleasure.
All right, see you soon. So everybody, yeah, that was a conversation that I'm so happy to have had and to have shared with you. Um, try to come meet me at the fashion show. Won't that be fun? October 19th. We will try to drop some information also on my Facebook page and Instagram, so to lead you, because I know that was just to save the date, but so you can buy tickets. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Wednesday at noon for your midweek midday connection. Bye bye.